Make welcome the Cutlery War! Give it up, yay!
Trouble had been brewing for weeks. The knives started it by cutting in line. The fork did not take this lightly.
Start from the beginning. Start from the beginning, please.
The Cutlery War. This important war began in the interval between meals, but trouble had been brewing for weeks. The knives started it by cutting in line. The fork did not take this lightly. Perhaps you've made a mistake? Most important goes first. You perhaps act under a misapprehension. Forks are the most important, as we alone pick up the morsels of food and move them gracefully to an eater's mouth. And who do you think cut those morsels of food for you? Well, if we want, we can make smaller pieces by pushing down on our sides. The knives guffawed. That's rich. In times past, we not only had the most important place at the table, we had the only place. You didn't exist. We knives have been respected, honored, and worn by our owner's side forever. Our ancestry goes back to the earliest of times, when we were fashioned out of flint or stone. And if we want, we can impale a potato or a carrot and move it to a mouth as well as any fork could. The forks chuckled and came back with, "Well, really? And if you were so indispensable, there would have been no need to invent us forks." So if you ask anyone at all, they will tell you that the fork is the most important piece of cutlery. Actually, we predate you, because with our tines, we resemble that most basic of tools, the human hand. This really angered the knives, who retorted, "Yeah, hands may be useful, but as soon as they were able, they grasped a stone and fashioned it into a point, into a blade. Who ever heard of going up against a mammoth with a fork?" And the knives howled in derision. The forks came back. "Yes, but once your work is over, the killing and the skinning, just notice which implement people choose. They put down the knife and pick up the fork, unless they are complete bumpkins. And who But a child or a fool would risk cutting its lips by using a knife to eat spaghetti. Yeah, and the forks laughed riotously at the knives. This insult really pissed the knives, and they shouted, "What heritage do you have? Our lineage is illustrious. Our family tree includes swords, rapiers, poignards, scimitars, lances, battle axes. You are upstarts, nobodies." And with a fierce cry, the knives launched themselves against the forks. "Knives forever!" And the forks counterattacked, shouting, "Forks rule!" The forks and knives finally exhausted themselves and tacitly agreed to a pause. In that pause, a tablespoon spoke. Excuse us, brothers and sisters, but when we were talking of importance, let us remind you that many of the dishes that people consume are combinations of ingredients with liquids. For example, soups and stews. I ask you humbly, what good are knives or forks to pick up soups? I'm afraid, but spoons can do what neither of you can. This speech infuriated both the forks and the knives, who made an immediate alliance and attacked the spoons. Who were rapidly beaten into submission and lay helplessly horizontal. But as soon as the forks and knives triumphed over the spoons, they glared at each other and resumed their war. Forks rule, knives forever. Once again, the knives and forks exhausted themselves and had to rest. Then, a small but brave teaspoon spoke. "Can't you see that this is getting us cutlery nowhere? What is the point, or points, of this fight? Forks, you must admit that knives can cut meat into smaller pieces than you. Knives, you must confess that forks can pick up cream cakes and peas that would just roll or drip from your sides. And humbly, we spoons maintain that neither of you can transfer soups to the mouth as well as we. And just imagine stirring a nice cup of tea with a fork or a knife. So can't you see that we must work together to provide our hosts with what they need to survive? Each one of us cutlery can do something that the others cannot do as well, and that makes us special. But together, we can do something that we cannot do alone, and by working together, we become greater and more useful. I think humans call this cooperation." The forks looked suspicious, and the knives looked dubious. But the exhaustion that brought them a moment's respite also gave them the opportunity to absorb the truth of what the teaspoon said. Slowly, hesitantly, the knives and forks moved closer to one another. They realized that the war was ridiculous. They noticed each other's scratches, notches, and dents. and began to commiserate. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, it was my fault. No, really, I shouldn't have done that. No, really, it's okay. They touched each other, signaling an end to the cutlery war. Of course, within the remnant of the knives, and inside the collection of forks and spoons, there were some who were bitter and distrusted this new tool called cooperation. But let us hope the truce holds so that we may finish our dinner in peace.
Yum. Yum. And now make welcome. Whoops. Oh, God. West African drumming. Give it up. Yay!